Well, hey, everybody. Good evening. I'm so excited to see a full house here tonight. I don't know if you guys know this. This is the biggest production studio anywhere between Orlando and Atlanta. Did you know that? Yeah, it's great. We can hold a lot of people in here, so I just love to see everybody in here tonight. So thank you so much for coming out on this important evening. It is your utility, your energy mix tonight as we kick this off, a special evening hosted by Adapt, which is part of our Jacksonville Today, and of course, our indispensable partner in this endeavor tonight, JEA. How about a round of applause for JEA? Thank you so much. I'm Melissa Ross, and I'm so pleased to welcome you here, to everyone watching live in the studio, or everyone at home that's actually streaming this presentation right now on our Jacksonville Today Facebook page. We're thrilled to be partnering with JEA on this event to gather input on the public utilities plans for its energy mix. And as we scroll ahead through the presentation, we want to say that JEA values your security. And so you see the exit signs posted clearly. We have security in the building tonight. We want everyone to feel comfortable. And I've been asked to remind folks that we will have refreshments coming up after the presentation, so stick around for that. Here's a quick look at the agenda, what we'll be doing tonight with our stakeholder recognition, an overview of JEA's IRP, a panel discussion which I'll moderate, and then you've been filling out cards for the audience Q&A portion of the evening. That'll come a little later tonight, where you'll have the chance to have your questions answered. And of course, closing remarks from JEA's CEO, Jay Stowe. So that's the agenda for this evening. And now I'd like to turn it over to Laura Shepis, Chief External Affairs Officer at JEA.
Thank you, Melissa. Good evening, and thank you for attending and watching online. We really appreciate WJCT giving us this opportunity to have this public forum, an open discussion about your utility and your future energy mix. JEA is your community-owned utility. So as we started to work on long-term plans for the right electric generation resource mix, we knew the most important step was to have the community's diverse voice right there in the room with us. 22 organizations agreed to serve on a stakeholder engagement group. We're so grateful to the individuals you see on the screen. Many of them are right here in the room, and of course you'll get to meet 4 of them in the panel discussion a little later. It was very important to us to gather voices that represented the city, environmental advocates, business interests, and consumers, especially those consumers who sometimes struggle in this economy to make ends meet. Starting in January of 2021, we met multiple times. We never had a boring meeting. Every meeting, there was a lively exchange of information, and we always discussed issues and forecasts and technology and needs under JEA's guiding principles of reliability, affordability, and sustainability. Stakeholder questions and ideas challenged our thinking, clarified our understanding, and ultimately created a much stronger set of goals and plans for the future. Would also like to thank Black & Veatch. These dedicated industry professionals provided us and the stakeholders with valuable data, analysis, and advice. It's my honor to recognize a few special guests in the room this evening. Our former JEA board chair and current board member, John Baker, current board member, Joe DeSalvo, and State Senator Clay Yarborough. Thank you all for making time to be here. It's now my pleasure to turn the podium over to Ray Marshall, our Chief Operating Officer.
Good evening, everyone. Good to be here. I've prepared a very short 2-hour presentation to talk about our IRP process, so you'll be pleased because it's not that long. So, behind me, this slide reminds me about the everyday. So, we know that every day JEA serves our community with both energy and water that's needed to meet all of the things that life requires. But today, we're going to focus on the electric side of our business. So every day, some of those people that you see there and hundreds more of our workforce are in the field, and they're maintaining our infrastructure, our poles, our lines, our substations, a variety of generating resources. And every day, we closely monitor weather events, and we manage sudden changes in demand. And every day, we meet customers to talk about your bills, talk about managing usage. And we do that because we are your utility, and we are accountable to you, to all of you. We serve over 1 million people across one of the largest counties in our nation. We serve all the way from individual homes to major industries. We serve people and institutions who have called Northeast Florida home for generations. And we are also part of the drive to welcome new people and businesses. So while the everyday is incredibly important, so also is looking ahead at the big picture. And that is what we did over the last year and a half. And we did that in partnership with our community stakeholders. So going in, we knew that our electricity system had many strengths, but we also had some real challenges. We knew that 2% renewable energy wasn't enough, and that some of our workhorse power plants are aging. We also knew that technology in our industry is rapidly changing. So on a typical day, we may generate about 2,000 megawatts of electricity, and on high demand, we may need to deliver over 3,000 megawatts. So I think it's helpful to keep this in mind as we talk about how we serve the community. So in the future, as you can see, our proposed 2030 energy mix is going to be much more diverse. It's going to include the nuclear energy from Plant Vogtle that we anticipate coming online next month. Solar is going to increase from 2% of our portfolio to almost a quarter. And we're significantly decreasing our dependence on solid fuel. A fundamental reason to undertake an IRP is to make sure that we have enough and the right type of generation to serve our customers. So as we move towards a more sustainable future, it's critical that we are able to serve everyone 24/7, 365, reliability. So in addition to renewables, we also need sources that don't depend on the weather that we can readily call upon. So what was this process that we undertook that helped identify the future mix? Laura touched upon that. We hired a team of consultants from the engineering firm of Black & Veatch, and we gathered our community stakeholders, and we called upon many members of our JEA team that are here today, and we started working on this to examine what the region's power needs were going to be over the next decade and all the way out into 2051. We looked at a wide-ranging set of potential futures, and we had 7 stakeholder meetings looking at the different scenarios. We explored the different data, looked at population growth forecasts, different rates of electric vehicle adoption, the cost of solar and batteries, the cost of fuel, economic growth, and so many other variables I can't mention. And we had lively, robust discussions. So just as important as all that modeling and the forecasts and the data were the questions and opinions of our stakeholders. Their opinions, your opinions, helped us to focus on the how and why and when. So we know that our region is growing, and that means that we will need to make sure we have more generation available to serve you. So that pie chart on that previous slide, not only is the portfolio need to be more diverse, that pie is also going to get bigger. So the 2030 goals. We took all of the input into consideration, and last month our board approved these 2030 goals. 35% clean energy. I mentioned Vogel, so that's carbon-free nuclear energy. And also, making up that 35% is about 24% of solar. We're going to retire our less efficient generation, which is a unit that's over at our Northside plant. 80% CO2 reduction from 2005 baseline, and we're already over 50%. 100% clean energy to serve our JA facilities. We believe that we should be setting the example. And also offset the electrification demand with customer programs. And those programs can include weatherization, demand-side management, distributed resources, rooftop solar, utility-scale solar. So this is going to be a big lift to reach these goals, but we are committed. And many may wonder, why is this such a big lift? Because it's going to take substantial resources to contract, build, interconnect all of these new sources. And we will need to upgrade our existing system. We will be competing with other entities for these same resources. We didn't set a goal for 2050, even though the computer model provided some results beyond 20. And we did not do that because a common solution to balance those things that are so important, affordability, reliability, and sustainability, didn't exist. But now that we've set these goals, what happens next? Well, just to give you a few of the highlights, we are reviewing over a dozen proposals for building solar right here in Duval County, as well as pursuing agreements to purchase power for solar outside of Duval County. We are conducting a feasibility study for a new, more efficient natural gas plant. We are examining how to make sure that we have the right transmission lines to move electricity all across our region. And we're going to be continuing the community conversations. And we're going to gear up to do our next IRP in 3 years to set longer-term goals. So we're going to be just a little bit busy for the next 7 years. But it takes all of that. It takes all these efforts to make sure that we're ready and we continue to serve this community as it deserves to be served. So with that, we are now going to turn, I want to thank you all, but now we're going to turn to this wonderful panel, and I'm going to now turn it over to Melissa Ross, who's going to facilitate that. Thank you.
All right, let's bring up, isn't this an amazing panel? As we welcome Lake Ray, First Coast Manufacturers Association, Lisa Reineman, St. John's Riverkeeper, Charles Moreland, City of Jax, Melanie Patz, United Way, and we'll also be hearing from Jay Stowe, the CEO. Everyone, come on up. Now, we're going to go through a few rounds of questions, as I mentioned, and then at the end, we're going to do all of your questions via the cards you're filling out, as many as we have time to get in this evening. So, this first round of questions is, hi, how are you, is designed to let our audience understand the highlights of many months of discussions and the diverse perspectives represented across all of the stakeholders. Let's begin with you, Dr. Moreland. How did the city help bring all of their expertise to bear in these IRP discussions?
Well, thank you so much for having me representing the city of Jacksonville. We were heavily involved with the IRP process, and I think what we shared is our commitment that we're making decisions based on the public's interest. Very important that we have shared goals toward making Jacksonville a more resilient city. And the need to diversify our energy sources must be balanced with resilience and affordability. Those things are very important to the city to connect our city's economic strategies moving forward.
Lake Ray, what's your perspective on this for the interests that you represent and what you bring to the table?
Well, thanks, Melissa. It's great to be here. And before I make any comments, I want to congratulate JEA on bringing together a terrific group across the city. I think it's like herding cats in some ways in terms of getting the ideas and the interest, bringing them forward. JEA has done a terrific job of serving our community, and I was delighted to be a part of this process in understanding what we need. I represent the First Coast Manufacturers Association, which represents on the order of about 45,000 people that are employed in manufacturing here in the 6 Northeast counties of the state. And during this, one thing that we're always trying to bring forward is what is going on, because power is so important and essential to making things. And later we can talk a little bit more about what the importance and the role of that. And so as we're looking and having input, it's very important for us to look and to see that there is a transition that's happening in manufacturing. We're moving into the 4th industrial age, which is a digital age, and which is, some of you have been seeing things on artificial intelligence. And so it's going to change some of what we're doing, at the same time giving us an opportunity to make things more cost effectively in terms of not just cost of the product, but cost in terms of energy and input. And so it was a delight being a part of this to make sure that, one, we have a reliable energy source, and two, that the costs are kept in control. And third, that we're meeting our overall programming, looking at how energy is created and how we're going to be able to use it. So those are things that we were able to bring to the discussion.
Thank you for that. There always is that tension, of course, between managing costs and dealing with environmental concerns, climate concerns. Lisa Reineman, St. John's River Keeper, why don't you share your perspective on that?
Absolutely, and thank you, and thank everyone in the audience for coming out here, and JEA for hosting this tonight. We were a very proud member of the Stakeholder Committee for this important conversation. We believe our role at St. John's River Keeper is to underscore JEA's responsibility and ability to protect our river and to protect our environment for future generations. Sadly, Northeast Florida is already experiencing the impacts of climate change, and the projections of our future conditions are dire, especially if we do not act now to dramatically reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Rising sea levels and more frequent hurricanes are causing more septic tanks to fail, more undermining infrastructure, threatening our river and our aquifer with saltwater intrusion. Last year, Northeast Florida was largely spared from the impacts of back-to-back hurricanes Ian and Nicole, but many upstream communities were not. In fact, they experienced historic flooding that inundated their homes with water, muck, and raw sewage. And that contaminated our river with excess nutrients and bacteria. Now, downstream communities like Jacksonville, since our river flows north, is under threat of resulting toxic blue-green algae outbreaks and fish kills like we're seeing right now just south of Jacksonville. Fortunately, the time has never been better for JEA to invest in renewable energy, to create new high-paying jobs, to lower monthly electric bills, and to chart a path forward for a resilient First Coast, all while protecting the St. Johns River, and that's the role we played in this process.
Thank you. So, Melanie Patz, people call the United Way when they need help, when they can't pay those bills.
That's right.
And you know all about that.
That's right.
So tell us a little bit about the perspective from where you sit.
Thank you, Melissa. Thank you, JEA. And our role in the IRP process was to do just that, share the data of the people who are calling 211 every day saying, I can't afford my utility bill or I can't afford rent. And there are many of them. So we talked a little bit about affordability, sustainability, and reliability. There is a balance there, and our voice at the table is affordability on behalf of the residents of Northeast Florida.
Always top of mind for you, I'm sure, Jay, but let me ask you, since this whole process began, what was the most surprising thing that you learned in hearing from all of these stakeholders?
It's probably something that I shouldn't have been surprised by. I didn't know how much input we would have through the whole process, but this has taken 21 months, and this group of people has been active and engaged And we just hit all the different things that we are trying to balance to be able to serve the foundational services to the community. Coming in, I thought we had the right people, we were gonna have good discussion, but it was really good discussion the whole time for us to be able to balance this. And then tonight, this is fantastic that there's this many people that are here. We talk about being foundational to the community, and with this many people interested in what and how we're going to accomplish moving to something that is more sustainable and keeping in mind the affordability and the economic development. We're just excited and appreciate all of you and all the other stakeholders that were involved in this. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Dr. Moreland, your colleague Ann Coglianese is here tonight, the city's Chief Resilience Officer. As the city works on these resiliency issues, how did working on this process help inform your process at the city on that front?
Very good question, and we're certainly proud of Ann and the work that she's been doing as our Chief Resiliency Officer. And the city's resiliency plan will provide a more comprehensive picture of our community's current and future vulnerabilities. What we learned is that through working with JEA to develop a future energy plan that emphasizes the importance of the relationship between the city of Jacksonville and JEA and continuing that relationship through conducting vulnerability assessments to make sure that we're making resiliency decisions collectively.
Right. And let me ask you about that. Like, building codes are changing. This whole discussion about resiliency is affecting business. How are you talking about that with your members, and what are those conversations like?
Well, thank you, Melissa, because it is a very challenging time, and they're very important issues that are out there. So, make no mistake about it, we're very concerned and we're watching. And every day, I think, as manufacturers, as those in business and different levels of business, we're constantly looking and saying, what is coming down the line? How is it being impacted? For example, right now, we're looking at policies that are being explored, and that's accounting for the amount of CO2 that is emitted in a process, in a manufactured process. So when we're looking at that, having discussions with JEA and looking at things, how are we going to have an accounting for that? So obviously, that ultimately leads to a possible tax, a possible further regulatory concerns. So we're looking at that and weighing in on that, because these are all things that are going to, one, impact cost, and two, impact our end users, either by costs flowing down or perhaps inability to be able to produce things.
That's a real concern. Yeah. So Lisa Reineman, we're talking about the energy mix, but of course, water's a big concern too, even though that's not really the overall focus tonight. I'm curious, when you had these conversations as the river keeper, you're mainly dealing with the water, the quality of the water. But we're here really to talk about energy at the same time. So the river is such a vital part of this community, and how we factor all of that in. Go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. Until this process, we were focused mostly on the water and sewer side of JEA.
Yeah.
Because that is, as we all know, can be challenging, especially with hurricanes. Luckily, there are more resiliency efforts, which we appreciate. And we also appreciate JEA's commitment to providing reliable, affordable energy since its inception. And I've heard that at the board meetings as well as with working with the team. But we realize that, we are seeing, as I mentioned earlier, the impacts of climate change undermine the investment our communities made in protecting our river, the investment that we as individuals make. And so we realize that not only do we have to work on stopping pollution at its source to protect our river, we also have to get to the root causes of climate change. And so to be part of this process, since it is new territory for us, we put together a team of experts working with the Sierra Club of Northeast Florida, as well as Dr. Lucy Sonningbird from a scientist was on the committee, and we're very fortunate on our board to have a former JEA exec to help us determine how do we engage in this conversation and ensure that we're asking for reasonable, responsible things of JEA that they can perform while keeping our costs down and low and making sure we're protecting the most vulnerable, and we're also protecting the vulnerable of today and making sure we're protecting it for future generations. So it is looking at the short term, understanding what we can do, but also the long term. And that's what we've been very pleased to see. But one of the challenges that we're worried about is while there is a commitment to 35% cleaner energy by 2030, that reverts back to fossil fuels after 20 years. And so there's much more work to be done, because if you look at the long-term models, the models show that we'll actually exceed carbon emissions around in 2044 of 2022 levels. So I was very pleased to hear that the conversation is going to be ongoing, because there's more work to be done, but it is a delicate balance of all the things we're talking about. And so that's why I'm thankful to have the stakeholder group and the openness of the board, as well as the JA team, to continue to have these important conversations, not only for our river, but for our future.
If I could, Jake, could you react to that concern she just raised?
Well, first of all, most of that wasn't a concern. Most of that was how we've worked really well together, and I appreciate that. The concern about the carbon emissions increasing on the back end, what we did was we started with our baseline, and there's 6 or 7 different scenarios, and some of them had a larger increase in carbon emissions on the back end. It's part of the reason that we focused on 2030, is because we believe there is technology that is being developed that will help us to achieve a lower outcome. Our board of directors, that 2 of them are here today, at our last meeting when they adopted the goals that Ray went over, one of the things that they asked us to do was to come back with a more robust, longer-term plan on what we could do beyond 2030. And we're starting to look at what that might look like. And one of the things that I believe will be in that plan is that we should not replace new generation should be less carbon intensive than whatever it's replacing. And so that's part of the commitment. We're trying to put that in a package, so we will address the concern that you brought up, so that we can continue to get better and maintain the affordability.
Let's talk a little bit more about affordability, because of course that is a big challenge for our municipal utility, Melanie Patz. They are aware of, as you said, ratepayers struggling to pay their utility bills, their groceries, their rent. And so this is a challenge for not just Jacksonville, but any city really. And of course, the other side of that is, if we become an unbearably hot place to live, that's going to put another kind of financial strain on us down the road. But can you share a little bit more of your data and the stories you're hearing about this, and how you've interacted with the utility on this?
Yeah, thank you, Melissa. So first of all, I want to acknowledge Jeff Winkler, who leads 211-988 and Mission United. He served on the IRP representing United Way. 211 answers calls every day from people who are struggling, most of them financially. In 2022, we answered 95,000 calls. 1 in 3 of those was about utilities. And these are people who either can't afford their utility bill or had questions about how they might pay it. Particularly, that was a high year because of the moratorium. And so there were lots of questions about the moratorium. We just released a report called ALICE, and that stands for Asset Limited Income Constrained Employed. So in simpler terms, it is people who are employed, who are working, and they are not earning enough to make ends meet. We have 41% of households in Duval County fall in the ALICE population or below. That is 110 households. And the expenses that are the greatest are housing, which of course includes utilities, transportation, food, and food has had a huge increase since the last ALICE report, and childcare. So all of those expenses are building up for families, and it's creating difficult challenges. So they are literally choosing between food and rent or medicine. And a lot of what our 211 call center specialists do is help them figure out those choices. So JEA has been a terrific partner of ours. The Neighbor to Neighbor Fund is an excellent source of resources to help people pay their utility bill. It's not enough. So the need far outstrips the resources that are available, and that's why those call center specialists are helping them to strategize what resources are available to pay for some of the other household expenses so that they can pay for housing.
Thank you for that. So let's go back to Dr. Moreland. Can you share a little bit more about how the City of Jacksonville and JEA are going to partner to bring the goals that they've just presented to this group a reality in the time frame they've laid out?
Yeah, so great question. And number one, I think it's all about collaboration to promote more energy efficiency in homes and in businesses. That's one. Two, we all have to recognize the future of JEA is a vital part of the future of Jacksonville. Very, very important to recognize and respect that. And then continue to remain an ongoing partner working with JEA to continue to strive toward net zero while ensuring a resilient and affordable source of energy needed for sustainable economic growth. Big part of it all. And then I think data sharing is very, very important. As we become a more data-driven community and a strategic thinking community through planning, we will continue to remain an important and cohesive unit working together as a group. All of that has to tie in for us to realize our goals and our objectives for future.
Lake Ray, why don't you share some of the goals and objectives that your organization has over the next 10 years and how they match up or not with what we're talking about tonight?
Great. Well, thank you again, Melissa. I think first, if I may interject, what manufacturers bring to our city, our region. It represents on the order between 15 and 20% of our GDP. So it's a very significant economic impact. Additionally, it employs, in our regional area, we have about 45,000 that are working in manufacturing. And in our county, we have, if you can believe this, 1,500 manufacturing companies. Now, many of these are the small mom and pop operators and all. And the term manufacturing is a broad range. It's not, I think long ago there was this idea that manufacturing is a very heavy process, something that you see that they're making heavy things. And it's like, actually, it's not. Most of it is more technical. We make batteries here, for those of you who don't know. And I'm not talking about little batteries. I'm talking about these large batteries, the SAFT batteries that literally will light up blocks and blocks of cities, city streets for a couple of weeks or months at a time. We manufacture wallboard here. We manufacture a lot of medical supplies. We manufacture beer. We bottle rum here. The list just goes on. It's really always amazing to me at what we make and what comes out of right here in Duval County.
Yeah.
And so when we look at this, it's very important to think of not just the power, but in terms of where we go, from here. If you start looking at where we are, the challenges, I think, are very interesting. Is because today there are a number of companies that exist that will be struggling 5 years from now, if not disappear. And there are companies that will appear 5 years from now and will be thriving. And that's because there's a change, and its technology is constantly changing. And everybody's got their cell phone, their iPhone, smartphones, and different things. Where we are today from where we were just 5 years ago. Technology is going to be driving that, and it's going to be driving that in terms of what JEA is doing. It's driving it in terms of what we're doing in manufacturing. We've got companies that are looking at reshoring, those that have been moved off, and they're looking at coming back. And there's a number of reasons that we could go through and talk about. But the reality is that we have this amazing opportunity with a workforce that gets an above pay scale. So when we're talking about the needs of people, it's about looking at, and we're going to have to look at how we're merging that in with the emerging technologies. So I think it's a very exciting time. While it's very challenging, it's going to require the minds of brilliance, and the minds of people that are committed to making a difference. And I think that's where our manufacturers are, and a role that we're going to be moving forward from here.
Yeah, certainly innovation in that space is driving some other types of climate solutions. Not really a focus for tonight, but it's interesting to watch as well. Okay, so Lisa Reineman, how do you see the Riverkeeper working with the utility to achieve some of these goals?
Sure. We have really enjoyed this opportunity, and we'll continue to work closely with the team as well as the board, and want to be an active member of this discussion. I mean, we sometimes get caught into a box of thinking we can't protect the future for our children and the environment and this planet for our children and have affordable energy. And I think that's something we can do both. It shows, if you look at how solar is so much cheaper now, and you see prices falling on renewable energy and solar while fossil fuels are going up. In fact, that's the reason for the high utility bills we have right now. And so one of the things we'll be working with, not only the JEA, but also the Renew JAX Coalition, is to, one, ask for JEA to revisit the IRP as soon as possible. So excited to hear that work is ongoing. But we also need to fix the clean energy bias within the IRP. For example, right now there is discussion about building a natural gas facility, even though you can get lower costs with solar per kilowatt hour. There's the retirement of the solar and nuclear after 20 years. The numbers, that puts a financial bias against solar. And so making sure that we remove that bias and realize that we can commit more to rooftop residential solar. There's opportunities to incentivize that and make sure that we're getting more rooftop solar. We need to implement more residential energy efficiency and weatherization programs that helps with cost. Because if we don't do something now, we're going to need more electricity to cool off more homes, to prevent health issues, and we need to reduce those bills and make people more comfortable and make sure they're not having health issues. But we do need a transition to 100% clean and renewable energy before 2050, but that work has to begin today to get there, to make sure we're balancing all of the issues we're talking about tonight. So look forward to this continuing conversation, but it's also going to take everyone in this room, because there is a lot of work to do.
Yes, okay. So as that work begins, Melanie Patz, share a little bit more about how the United Way is going to help try to ease the energy burden for people.
Thank you, Melissa. So United Way's vision is a community of opportunity where everyone has hope and can achieve their full potential. That's regardless of the zip code where they live or the color of their skin. We've got 3 drivers for that work. That's basic needs, financial well-being, and racial equity. For basic needs, we're working on reducing cost, affordable housing, affordable food. For financial well-being, we're working on increasing income, education, and workforce development. And the Alice report reaffirmed that we have racial equities in our community. 34% of our households in Alice are white. 55% are Black or African American, and 46% Hispanic. So we absolutely see the disparities every day, and we're working to address those as well at a systemic level, as well as at a systemic level going to scale, because as Lisa said, we're not going to get this done just with incremental change. We've got to make sure that we're making large change. In the affordable housing area, I'm thrilled that we're working in that space to make sure that we're preserving affordable housing and preserving that in a number of ways. That's repairs and making sure that those homes, particularly in low-income historic neighborhoods, that we anticipate will be developed as a result of the Emerald Trail, which we are all excited about, that they are able to decrease their utility bills as well, again in partnership with JEA, through audits and then dollars to make the difference that they need that are identified through those audits. So we're working in all of the areas to try and improve the quality of life for everyone in our community.
All right, one more question before we go to all of your questions, and this is for Jay. What should customers expect in terms of cost impacts coming out of the decisions that will flow from this plan?
Well, I think the good news is that the models that we ran were looking at least cost alternatives. And so between now and 2030, we will increase the amount of solar that we have on our system by 12 or 1,300 megawatts. The presentation with the chart showed that we had less than 2% solar right now. That is not enough, and we need to have more. Because it's the least cost model, then these are, we're going to be able to keep rates as reasonable as possible. We are having to pay for Plant Vogel that's coming online in June, and so that is expensive, and we're going to have to deal with that. But we've managed our fuel a lot over the last year. That has reduced the cost. And in fact, right now, we have, whenever we combine water, sewer, and electric, we are the lowest utility rates for the state, for peers that we compare to. And so we're going to continue to keep an eye on that and keep on pushing for economic development, because there's two ways to help. Part of that is lowering cost, part of that is raising income. And if we can do both of those things, continue to partner with the people that are in this room and the stakeholders to look at energy efficiency, distributed energy resources, including rooftop solar, including more utility solar, then I think we can get stronger and keep our cost at a reasonable level.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone, for filling out these cards. We appreciate the questions from the audience. Let's get to some of them right now. Here's one from Susanna in Arlington. I'll direct this one to you. You're going to get it probably the bulk of these, but I'll try to spread them around. But here's a question from her. Can JEA consider using the direct pay option under the Inflation Reduction Act in lieu of tax credits for the production of clean energy? I am concerned we are leaving money on the table.
It is one of the things that we have to look at and understand. That was passed during this analysis. Previously, we did not have the option to own our own solar because it was too expensive and there's tax credits. This levels the playing field, and it's one of the options that we will look at, yes.
All right, here's one. I'll give this one to you, Melanie. Please consider the low to moderate income underserved areas of Jacksonville's northwest area suffering the most from carbon emissions and other negative impacts of urban heat. That's from Deborah. She is with the NAACP and their Jacksonville branch Environmental Climate Justice Committee.
Thank you, Deborah. I appreciate that. So the areas where we're beginning are historic East Jacksonville and then North Riverside, which is north and west of the Riverside. We're also looking at zip code 10, 4, 4, 8, and 9. So we will be working in all of those areas.
Oh, here's a good one. It doesn't have a name. How is JEA disposing of nuclear waste created by Plant Vogel? I don't think you have to do that, but maybe it's a chance to explain how you're incorporating nuclear power.
Yeah, so Plant Vogel we don't own Plant Vogel, which is one of the reasons that it drops off in the 20th year. And so there are systems in place at the nuclear plants to deal with that on-site and then ultimately off-site. But luckily, that is not directly our responsibility. The people that are running that plant are going to take care of that. They've got plans to do that.
Okay. And
While you're looking for another good one,
yeah.
Can I also respond to the low to
I'm going
moderate
through all of
income?
your excellent questions.
The low to moderate income question about carbon emissions. We are reducing the carbon emissions significantly. If you look on that chart again, 3 to 5% of our energy will be coming from the North Side plant in 2030, and we reduced to 80% of the 2005 levels. So I think directionally we're doing the things that need to be done.
Here's one from Parr at Lakewood, and this is going off of the comment I believe you made a minute ago. Why even consider a new fossil fuel plant with gas that will continue CO2 pollution when cleaner and more efficient solar with battery storage is clean, renewable, and at lower cost? Maybe can we talk a little more fully about that?
So the models that we ran took into account the total cost and the reliability. And batteries right now are expensive and do not cover the time. Clouds and night cause us to need to be able to have a plan to be able to serve energy 24 hours a day. And so we're trying to balance that. One of the goals of the IRP that the board adopted was to retire less efficient generation. So whenever we replace some generation with some other natural gas generation, it's more efficient than what we had before and produces less carbon. And again, we're continue to balance those things so that we have the least cost option is the model that we've ended up proposing for 2030.
Do you mind if I make an additional comment on that? I think the challenge that we have as we're trying to face the future, and in facing the future, you have to have the technology to drive it. We're now at a point that we're facing the technology to drive it. And you can't just turn something off because it has a system that you don't like. We do, that may be a carbon emitter, but we do have to look when we say, as JEA is putting forward, which is what's very good about this plan, is looking about efficiencies and improving the efficiencies of generation. It's about efficiencies that all of us are experiencing now with LED lighting. It's about efficiencies of things that we're doing. And so we need to squeeze as much out in efficiency. And as technology drives that, you'll be able to get more efficiency out of other processes, and you'll be able to change as time and as technology is driven to get there.
Thank you for that.
Could I just
Yes,
add one
go right
thing
ahead.
to it? And I think what's exciting about this conversation, just the 20 months I've been working on this with all of y'all, the technology is moving so quickly. With the Inflation Reduction Act, you have incentives we've never had to see more solar made locally in the United States. I mean, there's so much opportunity, and I think that's what we're hoping, that it's very fluid, and there's this conversation always looking towards those new technologies that give us reliable, affordable energy, but protecting this community for future generations. And I think we're right here at the cusp of it. And so I just want to say, I think that technology is here, and it's at our disposal, and look forward to seeing that happen for our community.
So if I might make just a quick comment back to that, because there's a lot of focus on solar, but we have to be very realistic. Solar cannot and will not be able to develop the energy demands that we have. It's absolutely, totally impossible. Anybody who says otherwise is not telling you the truth. Solar is an important part of a basket of things that we need to have. Furthermore, I don't think any of us in here would like to see us plow over fields and fields of live trees and other places to accommodate solar. So it's about how do we get the max out of our solar? How do we get the max out of, again, emerging technologies to be able to recycle that, use battery sources when necessary, but we have to have an open conversation because solar is just not, it's impossible. It can only generate about 1/4 of the entire need of the entire world if you were able to capture it. So we have to be very realistic with that. So it's about technology to improve how we use and to create other sources.
Yeah, I think the technology is the key, and it is fluid, and it is moving very quickly, and it's going to allow us to be able to make really good decisions. We're committed to doing another IRP in 3 years. And if we do IRPs every 3 years, then between now and the time that we are building the solar and the plants on this goal, we will have done 2 more rounds of this. Because, and we're doing, I got a clap. You've been getting all the claps. But we need to do that because the technology is changing so quickly. While the technology is changing quickly on the generation side, it's also changing quickly on the use side. We've had flat energy usage since 2008. And we're going to work hard to continue that with energy efficiency programs, distributed generation, and figuring out how the best way to move forward with supporting solar on customer sites, which means rooftop solar or solar that are behind the meter or on customer sites so that we can balance all of these things. But right now we have to do that carefully because if we are not careful, we will shift costs to other customers that we don't want to do. That will cause problems with affordability and economic development. So we're trying to balance those things and come up with a solution that is with the commitment of the clean environment and affordability and all those other things. And real quick, before, there's a lot of questions here. We're not likely to be able to
No, there's
answer
no
every
way.
question.
And a
but
lot of you all asked similar questions, so.
But we've committed, we will put the questions on our website. We'll answer every question. We just might not be able to get to them tonight.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, and a lot of you asked very similar questions, so maybe just take two or three more. Here's one from Vanessa, Northwest Jack. She says, please explain JEA's positions on net metering. As a community-owned utility, how will JEA assist seniors and low-income households transition to home solar?
So it's a complicated question. And I'm going to take a stab at simplifying it. Right now, our policy is that we will pay you the avoided fuel cost, part of the bill. The reason that we don't pay the full amount is because we still have to have our system in place and have to have support for that. So there's a balance. What we are committed to doing is trying to figure out what the value. We've got a study going on now to understand the value of distributed energy, the value of solar, so that we can decide what the right price to pay for solar might be. Right now, the rooftop solar is becoming more viable, but is still expensive. And whenever we figure out what the right price is, it's probably not full retail, which is full net metering, and it is probably more than what we're paying right now, and we're trying to study that to get to the right number.
Oh. Alrighty.
That's like 2 claps.
Doing great. This question is directed to Jay, but you know what? We can open this up to others. This comes from Scott in Riverside. He wants to know what roles currently exist and what roles need to be added in the years to come to support our sustainability goals. Maybe we could start with you on that one, because of course the city has added a chief resiliency officer, but is there room for more? Or that's something I guess you can all speak to.
Yeah, that's a very good question, and we talk about that in the mayor's office quite a bit, especially with our chief resiliency officer. And obviously, as we grow and we start looking at the data and looking at our plan for our city's resiliency plan, there is going to be a need for more subject matter experts in different areas. Heat could be one, cooling could be another, energy efficiency, all of those things and there's going to be a need for more than just Ann.
Yeah.
You're going to need a team. And we recognize that, and we certainly recognize that. And what's great about it is that our mayor-elect will have an opportunity to hear that as well, the need to expand and grow in that area. And then it also goes back to collaboration, because the resources that Ann may not have right now in this space, she has it in our stakeholders to help with some of that. So great opportunity to improve our effectiveness and efficiency from a governmental perspective to tie back into our stakeholders.
Anybody else want to respond to that?
Yeah, I think I would just add it's critical that we not only look at things through a resiliency perspective, because, I mean, obviously we know after Hurricane Irma, we have to deal with sea level rise. We have to deal with flooding and all the issues that happen as a result of flooding. But we as a community have to focus on the root causes of climate change. It's happening already here. I have a 14-year-old and 16-year-old. I look at this through their eyes and what they're going to be facing when they're sitting in this room trying to figure out. And I want to make sure we're doing everything we can today as a community, and remember that we're connected to everyone else in the state of Florida and what's on the First Coast. So I just think it's important to get to those root causes as a community, looking at the long-range future.
Let's close them with this question from Raven on the south side. How can all of us as individuals support JEA's goals via this IRP?
We are doing that tonight, coming and showing interest And I was paying attention to which things you clapped at, so that helps us kind of weigh this out. Making sure that you are able to make the best decisions you can make on how you use energy and how you use water, and how, and then continuing to let us know. This is not the last stakeholder engagement process that we will have and use, and so I appreciate that you're here. This is more important for us to see this full room. I was scared when we said we're going to have I didn't realize it's the largest place between, on the East Coast.
I've always been told
basically.
that, between Orlando and Atlanta,
And
the biggest space.
I was worried that, 10 or 15 people were going to come. And so I'm really pleased that you're here, and I think this was an important piece of this was just being present to help us know what direction we need to go.
Thank you so much. Well, we're going to have a close from our CEO here, but how about a round of applause for the panel? Thank you. Thank you. They told me you're closing the show.
So we didn't practice. We talked about how to do everything except this part.
Yeah. I guess we'll just sit down.
First of all, I thank you, Melissa, for helping kind of facilitate
Thank you.
this, and for all the people that have helped kind of make this work. All right. I walk around. If I step close over here, somebody scream out for me. So, and thank you all for taking the time to be here. And those of you that can the stakeholders that were part of the committee, can you raise your hands too while you were there? So. The world is changing a lot. The utility business, the electric business, has been foundational to the community for years and years. But for 100 years, it didn't change very much. About 20 years ago, it started to change a little bit. And now it is changing at a pace that we haven't seen before. Sort of cliche because people say the world is changing a lot. In this industry, it's changing a whole lot. And we've made a lot of progress. Those of you that have been here a long time will remember plants that had more carbon emitting than what we have right now, right downtown. We've made progress. I don't want to lose track of that because there's teams of people that were here before us that were making progress on making things better. There are regulations that are coming out that are going to change the way we have to think about things, and then there's going to be the right thing to do from the things that we hear tonight. The right thing to do is both environmental, it is economic development, it is serving those that need help, because we serve everybody. It's one of the best things about our job is that we serve every single person in our region, from the people that are having the most trouble to the largest manufacturer in the city. And we want to keep on doing that and doing that well and pay attention to that. And we spend most of the time talking about the big stuff because it's fun to talk about the big solar and what size that is. But we're also committed to serving our own facilities with 100% clean energy. That's a commitment that other cities have made. Some of the examples that we have looked at, other cities have made, and so we'll do that. We've made a commitment to do electrification and customer programs to help support commercial, industrial, and residential customers with distributed energy efficiency that will help drive down their cost and will help drive down the capital costs that we need to spend to build generation in the future. When we do those things, we will be better tomorrow than we are today. Because Ray started off talking about how what we do is every day. What we do is every day. Tomorrow is every day. And 3 years from now when we do the IRP again is every day. And we're going to pay attention to what you say every day so that we can keep on being foundational to the community and support the economic development of Northeast Florida for years and years to come. I really do appreciate you all being here tonight, and I appreciate you taking the time. I think there's cookies or something, some snacks.
Yes.
So please help yourself to that, and then we'll be around if there's other questions. We'll put the questions that we didn't get to tonight on the website. And one more time, thank you very much for being here tonight. I appreciate it.
Thank you all for coming, and on your way out, if you could, please fill out the survey that you see there so that we can get feedback on the presentation tonight and continually refine how we do these events. Thanks, everyone, for coming. Have a great night.